Hello, in this video we're going to have a look at the steps involved in multiplying polynomials. One of the most popular methods for multiplying polynomials is called the FOIL method. And the FOIL method is a nice little acronym for first terms multiply the outside terms, multiply the inside terms, and multiply the last terms. In algebra, you'll see a lot of binomials multiplied to binomials. So in algebra, you'll see a lot of two terms being multiplied to two terms. And so the FOIL method helps to keep everything straight. That way you don't drop any steps or lose any terms. So let's just quickly run through how you would go through foiling a FOIL example when you have a binomial multiplied by a binomial. Our first terms are the x times the x. So x times x gives me x squared, okay? So once I have multiplied my first two terms, I then go and I multiply my outside two terms. X times 1 is 1x. Okay, just an x. You can write it as a 1x or just an x, whatever you're comfortable with. Sometimes when I was learning, I would put a 1 there just to remind myself that it's 1, not 0. And then I have my inside terms that I'm going to multiply. 9 times x is a positive 9x. And my last two terms that I'm going to multiply, positive 9 times a positive 1 is a positive 9. Now, when you're done multiplying your terms together, it's best practice to go back and look and see if you have any terms that you can combine. And sure enough, I have this term, which is an x term, and I have this term, which is also an x term, and I can combine these two terms. I have 1x plus 9x, and that will give me a 10x. So my final answer will be x squared plus 10x plus 10x plus 9. And that's my final answer for this first example. Now let's have a look at multiplying different, we're going to look at multiplying different polynomials together, not 2 and 2, not two binomials, but what do you do if you have maybe 1 times 2 or 2 times 3, and just some simple tricks that you can use so that you don't lose track of any steps. Okay, let's have a look at our first example. I have a monomial, 3x squared, and I'm going to multiply it by 2x plus 6. Now, when you are multiplying, you won't always see a multiplication symbol here. So I've put red little dashes here to remind us, hey, if I have a parentheses right next to another parentheses, I'm multiplying. A parentheses next to a parentheses, I'm multiplying. A parentheses right next to a parentheses, I'm multiplying. You won't see a multiplication symbol most of the time. So let's have a look at what we do here. I take my first term and I multiply it to every term in the second parentheses. Okay, so I end up with a 3 times a 2 is a 6. X squared times x is x to the third. That's my first multiplication. Then I'll do my second. A 3 times a 6 is a positive 18. X squared times x to the 0, really, because there's no x term there, would be just x squareds. I don't pick up any more x squareds, or x's, I guess I should say. So basically, that's finished. I look at my terms here, and this is the last name of x cubed, and he's last name x squared. I cannot combine x cubes and x squareds together, so we are finished with that problem. The second one here is a little bit, well, actually, it's just like what we did with our FOIL problem, because I have a binomial times a binomial, but it's a little more complicated because I have two different variables in there. So let's just quickly review. We do firsts, then we do outsides, then we multiply the insides, then we multiply the last terms. Okay, so first times first is an x times a 6x. That gives me a positive 6. I have an x and an x, so I get an x squared. Now let's multiply the outside terms, my x times my 5y. So when I do that, I have a positive 5. Remember, this is like a 1 right here, right? So it's 1 times 5, which is 5. And then I have an x and a y, and they cannot combine, so they just link up, and I get a 5xy. Now let's multiply the inside terms. Negative 2i times a 6x. Negative 2 times a positive 6 is a negative 12. And again, I have two different variables here, and because they are not the same, they don't combine, they just link up. And then I have my last terms to multiply. Negative 2y times a positive 5y. And negative 2 times a positive 5 is a negative 10. Y times y is y squared. Let's look at our terms and see if there are any terms that we can combine. I have an x squared term. That will not combine with a y squared term. They're different. But look here, I have an xy term and an xy term. So these two have the same last name. I can combine them. We call them like terms. So I have my 6x squared first. That's the highest degree, or one of the highest degrees here. 6x squared. Positive 5xy, take away 7xy. Think of it like 5 apples, take away 12 apples is negative 7 apples. You keep the same last name. And then I have my last term here, 10y squared. All right, let's look at our last example. For our last example, we take the first term and we're going to multiply it to every term inside the second parentheses. So when we do that, 2x times x cubed is 2x to the fourth. 2x times negative 2x is negative 4x squared. 2x times positive 3 is a positive 6x. Now that I have done the first term times every term in my second parentheses, we're going to look at the second term. We're now going to multiply the second term into the second parentheses. So the negative 7 will get multiplied by every term in the second parentheses. Okay, negative 7 times x cubed is a negative 7x cubed. Negative 7 times a negative 2x is a positive 14x. And then negative 7 times positive 3 is negative 21. Let's go through this problem and see if we have any similar last names or like terms. I have x to the fourth. Do I have any other x to the fourths? No, I don't. Here's an x squared. Do I have any other x squareds? No, I don't. Here is an x term, and here is an x term. So it looks like I will be able to combine these two x terms, and I should be able to make a 20x with those. 6x plus 14x gives me 20x. So let's rewrite our polynomial from highest terms to lowest terms, or highest degree to lowest degree, pardon me. 2x to the fourth goes first. I have an x to the third. That will go next. Alrighty, my next one will be an x squared term, so we'll put minus 4x squared. That goes next. Then I have my combination with my 6x and my 14x, so I have my positive 20x right here, and then minus 21 at the end. So just as a reminder, when you have your parentheses right next to each other, just like this, remind yourself, even if there's no symbol there, that this means we are multiplying. And then, as a quick reminder, you take the first term and you multiply it by every term in the second parentheses. You take your second term and you multiply it by everybody in the parentheses. If you have a third term, you would take that and multiply it by everybody in the second parentheses. And in this case, in this kind of an example, you would end up with 3 plus 3 plus 3. You'd end up with 9 terms that you would have to look at and see if any of them are similar and see if you can combine any of them.